Good morning, everyone. I don't know about you, but I watched that video just now. I thought I could never have been cast for that video because you had to have extra talent to be able to spin on your head like that, or when I see people skateboarding like that, I actually, if you're a skateboarder here, you might be a superhero. You probably were in this section. You didn't need to watch them because this is the thing. This has nothing to do with the message, but my question is, how does one, it's like magic. I know that we're Christians, we're not supposed to believe in magic, but how do they get the skateboard off the ground? Anyways, some of you who are skateboarders can come and explain that to me later. This morning, I want to talk a little bit differently than maybe we do sometimes in church. I think sometimes we talk theoretically and theologically, and we do need to do that. But this morning, I want to be quite a bit more practical, partly because your kids are here today. And I said to Angela on the way here, if I had all my 4 kids in the service, I would want the speaker to be quick, and I would want them to be practical. When Dave and I were pastoring in a large church, and our third child was small, and he was very tiny for his age and very bald. And our church was very formal. So this is a church where everybody wears a suit. Praise the Lord. I actually thought to call you guys last night saying, am I supposed to, people are going to be mad that I got holes in my jeans? I didn't, because I've been Calgaryized now. And in Calgary, you could wear sweatpants up to, and probably a beer t-shirt. I don't know if that's legitimate for me to say here. Nobody would say anything. But in the church we last pastored in, it was a suit church. And by a suit church, I meant everybody was very serious, reverent. And in the middle, we were doing the Lord's Holy Table, and it was a beautiful Sunday morning. And the way our church was set up is we were sitting in the middle of this bowl, and there were about 1,500 or 2,000 people in this service. It was very, very full. And a very solemn and somber moment where everybody got the cracker and the grape juice, the thimble of grape juice. It's like a quasi-snack. So my little son, who was 1, but imagine he was very small. We were pastoring with Jamie and Michelle Stewart, and he decided at that moment, that quiet moment, would be a good time to call out to the pastor. And this is what he yells. "Hey, Jamie! Hey, Jamie! I'm wondering if you could give me a snack." Yes! Snack time. And he wouldn't stop. Now, my little guy he's so embarrassed that I tell this story now because he's very quiet. And he always says to me, I didn't say, "Oh, yes, you did. You did say that." And I was mortified. I didn't know what to do, but he was so small that really to put my hand over his face would look like I was suffocating a baby. There's your pastor suffocating their child in church. So I didn't know what to do, so I just let him carry on, which probably wasn't a good suggestion either. I didn't think to myself, maybe I should take my child out. So listen, I tell you all this for this reason. If you're here and you've got kids and they're going to shout out in the middle, don't feel bad, because I've been there. Don't take your child out. It's okay. It's just making me feel better. And they'd like to do a jig, come on the stage with me. I'm never going to notice. I'm never going to be worried. But this morning, I want to talk about connection a little bit for a few minutes, because I think the idea of connection is actually throughout the scriptures, but it's kind of in a backwards way, and I want to talk about it for a few minutes. If you look at the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, you'll see that the Bible is full of stories of families. Really, it could be called a collection of the world's most dysfunctional families, though. Because, you start off with Adam and Eve, and their kids are Cain and Abel, and they kill each other. So that's a neat way to start family. Neat. And then we go to Noah and his kids get him drunk and then laugh at him naked. It's really weird. That's a very, when you are reading the Bible with your children and you get to that chapter in Genesis, I can remember just sort of going, and then some things happened, and they were very naughty, and they got put in a corner. God wasn't happy at the end. Because it's awkward reading that to your little children, and then there's a lot of questions and you don't know how to answer them. And then, so that's a neat family. And the weird thing is, they were the best of the best. They were the cream of the crop. They were the people that got saved. It's like Maury Povich, or I don't even know if that's still a show, but it's like one of those weird shows. And then we go on to the nice twins, Jacob and Esau, and they lie to each other and deceive each other. And Jacob's name actually means liar. So this is, and now we don't think of it that. We think of him as Israel. But in that day, when they named him, that's what it meant. So they were a really nice, and you had the father for one child and the mother for another child. This is like the beginning of UFC, I guess, when they came out. So these are the families so far, really good. Great stock if you've got a child that you're looking to marry. By the way, I believe in arranged marriages. And so if I was looking, which I am beginning to look now, we have teenagers, and we're not looking to get them married soon, but you can never be too prepared. So if I'm looking, I'm thinking no to these families. No. And then we get to Joseph and his brothers, Genesis chapter 37. It's a really great chapter, such an uplifting chapter, where Joseph is hearing from the Lord, bless God, he's the one at the front getting visions. And then his brothers decide, no, we want to kill you. Forget it though, we won't kill you, it'd be better if we sold you. So they sell him, and like sometimes I say to my children, if you don't smarten up, I'm going to put you for sale on Kijiji. I do threaten them. Now it's a joke. Don't write me letters about this. We all know it's a joke because nobody would buy my kids. But that's terrible. It's just because they're not here. They are lovely. They are lovely children. They are, all of them. But the thing is, Joseph's brothers actually do this. Like, this is amazing to me. They get up one morning and go, that Joseph, he's on my nerves. I think I'll sell him. And they sell him. Now, I think we read the Bible and we go, yeah, this is totally normal. Like Genesis chapter 37, a whole bunch of brothers sold their brother. Like, this is so weird. If one of your kids came home and said, hey, we sold Sam. Well, at least we got $250 for him. Let's go to Olive Garden. I know Olive Garden isn't here anymore. It is in Calgary, though. It is one good thing about living in snow. But here's the thing. That is weird. We read the Bible, though, often. Like all of these stories. Yes, God's chosen people. Bless God. Weird. Like, weird should be our response. Our church has recently grown with a lot of people from the deaf community, and it's been a very beautiful thing. A lady in our church about 6 months ago said to me, I guess about a year ago, came to me and said, I really feel like God has called me to do deaf interpretation for the church. And I said, great, there's nobody comes to our church who's deaf. She said, well, I think that I'm going to start interpreting and maybe people will come. And I thought, now this is a reference for all the people that are from the 80s. Do you remember when Kevin Costner did that movie called Feel the Dreams, If You Build It, They Will Come? And inside of my head, I'm making jokes like, if you start interpreting, deaf people will come. But the weird thing is, she did hear from God. See, we're all the same flat kingdom here. And deaf people started coming, like by the droves. We actually have a very large deaf community that comes to our church now, and many of them never been to church, never heard the gospel. In fact, it's one of the most marginalized communities in our country. Nobody's ever shared the gospel with them. We had somebody that came for the very first time. She comes all the time now, but last Christmas she came. She came to me with tears in her eyes and said, I had never heard the Christmas story before. I knew it was something about Jesus, but I never heard it. So I always go to them when we're telling these stories. And they will always say to me, these are weird stories. This Bible has got a lot of weird stuff in it. Why? I think that's a really good question for us to ask. Why does the Bible have all these, like you think, couldn't a God have found like 2 or 3 nice, normal Brady Bunch well, the Brady Bunch wasn't really normal, but they were sort of normal. They had an Alice, and I always wonder if I could get an Alice, but I can't afford one. So anyways, but like God, do you think he could have found some regular families? And I've been asking the Lord about that. Like, wouldn't it be nice to have a family that you could read from start to beginning? They got up, they did morning devotions, children were slain in the spirit, they got dressed. You never had to say that outfit's not appropriate, go back and change it. They ate all their vegetables. Nobody cried. Nobody pinched each other. Everybody was lovely, and they grew up, and they were powerful in the Lord. How come there isn't a tale like that? Like, I would have liked that to be a story. Anybody else with me on this? And then I started to think about how we are as humans. I want to suggest this morning that the reason that there are so many dysfunctional families in the Bible is that as humans, we are better at understanding when something is not there than when it is. Let me give you a point in case. I had some chocolates here. See, I wasn't going to use them because they're very small, but if I were to bake, now, my husband is a trained chef, and ladies, if you are not married right now, I'm going to say to you, you should start praying that in, because this has been good for me and for my, so I am a cook. I'm the sous chef in our home. I am beside the chef worker. But sometimes I get nervous because Dave is like a Jinsu knife person. He could get on and chop, and he can do fancy things. He can make anything he can make. Well, the first couple of years we were married, I would get very nervous in the kitchen because I'd be chopping. I thought I was a good cook. Clearly I wasn't. But I could just hear him. He's a lovely man, and he's very funny and very kind. But when we get into the kitchen, he kind of goes Gordon Ramsay on me. And I could hear him breathing like this. I'd be chopping, and he'd be like this. It was like the return of Darth Vader. And so I would get very nervous. And when you get nervous, you do things wrong. So one time we were getting ready for a Thanksgiving dinner with some of our good friends, and I was in charge of making pies. And I said to Dave, you don't need to do this because this is my specialty. This has been passed down for generations. I know how to make a good pie. I will be making the pies. Okay. So I got really nervous because he was watching me cut the apples. And I said to him, I do not need your help. I can do this. And apparently, I substituted salt for sugar. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you substitute salt for sugar in your pie, the pie does not taste very good. Now, it is difficult when you have a good pie to distinguish why that pie is so good. You ever been out to a restaurant and the meal was just really good, and someone would say, well, why is it really good? Well, it's hard to describe why it's really good. And you see this actually, if you go on Yelp, you'll see this on 5 stars. And the 5-star things will just say, wonderful, excellent, great. Okay, but conversely, when you go on Yelp and there are terrible places and you get 1 star, oh, we have a lot to say about that. I'm going to tell you that if you went to a 1-star restaurant, the pie was made of salt, the server was cranky, they had bad breath, they haven't brushed their teeth since 1989. We can pick out things that are missing. It's a lot easier. It's part of the human condition. It's easier to find fault than it is to determine why something's good. And I think this is part of the reason God put these families into the Bible. Now, part of it is, I think it gives us a little bit of a, God works through people like me, right? But I think part of it is that we can look at it and go, okay, so what was missing from all these families? I think we're better at distinguishing that. I want to suggest this morning that the mixed up and dysfunctional families and people in the Bible were dysfunctional precisely because they lacked connection with one another. So Abel was killed by Cain because Cain and Abel had no psychological connection together. Esau and Jacob, their families had no connection together. And I think when you look at the scripture, you'll see that connection is in the very nature of God. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, they did everything in connection. And the Bible says that we were made in the image of God. In his image, God created them, male and female, he created them. This idea that we were created to be connected. And when we're not, the Bible's really clear. When we get out of connection with God and with one another, bad things happen. It's a little bit like when we get a connection with one another, it's a little bit like our family pie tastes like salt instead of sugar. And research is beginning to show us that this is true. Did you know that people that are socially connected have a 50% chance of living long? long life. You have stronger gene expression for immunity. You have higher self-esteem, better emotional regulation skills. So connection, we see this in the Bible. I don't think we talk about this enough in the church, though. I don't think we get to the ground level enough and say, okay, so like what are we doing to promote social connection between ourselves and in our families? We think that will happen if we sing 4 2 fast songs and 3 slow songs. You might not do this here, but we do it at my church. And we have some announcements and somebody talks to us for 30 minutes. That's going to promote social connection. Now, I think on some level it does help, but it can't be the only thing. Because conversely, people with low social connectivity, people who don't feel connected to one another, they have worse health. Listen, is worse for your health than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. That's crazy to me. Say it's the number one health concern, how connected you feel. Moms and dads, we have got to decide that this is the most important thing we do with our children. We get socially connected to one another, because how we're connected to each other, how we're connected to our children is going to determine how they connect with God. We have higher susceptibility to anxiety and depression and slow recovery from disease. For almost 15 years of my life, I worked in inner city contexts, both in America and in Canada. And I realized that most people's problems in the very poorest neighborhoods in the United States and in Canada were not monetary issues. They weren't. They were social connection issues. Connection issues. I met a little girl. I was living in Minneapolis at the time, and I met a little girl named Angel, and Angel was in the 2nd grade, but she was about this big. She probably weighed like 30 pounds. She was so little, and she had teeth missing all over the place, and the cutest little thing you've ever seen. Angel couldn't write or read in the 2nd grade, and so I said, I'll meet with her a couple times a week, and so I built this little friendship with this little girl, and the amount of pain that this little girl went through was unbelievable. She would sleep under her mom's bed at night, and when her mom had guests in at night, and I don't need to extrapolate more, when she had guests in, Angel was told to put headphones on and listen to music. This is before the days of iPods, because I am old. She was told to put the Sony Walkman on. And she, in the time that I knew her, every single one of her siblings became incarcerated. Her mom was incarcerated for aiding and abetting a murderer. She walked into her backyard one afternoon after school to see somebody hanging from a tree. This poor little child, no connection to anybody at all. She used to say to me when I'd pick her up, Miss Jess, I wish I could live sometimes in the fridge that was in her backyard, because it would be safe there and nobody could hurt me. This is before all this research came up on social connectivity, but even as a 21-year-old girl, I understood that this girl wasn't suffering from lack of money, she was suffering from lack of people being connected to her. So a few friends of mine and I decided that we were gonna find her a little bit of connection, and so I borrowed one of my roommate's car and I took her on her very first car ride ever. Do you know that there are all kinds of people, even in this city, who've never had that kind of reach out? They've never had. She got in the car and she said, what is this? And it was a seatbelt. And we learned what a seatbelt was. And then we went out to lunch, and we went to the old spaghetti factory because I was 21 and had no money, and $5.99 sounded awesome. And my little friend Angel got to the table, and she'd never had something with cutlery before. She was so cute. She just like banged the cut. I had to tell her, no, I can't afford the dishes. Please don't break things. And then we decided, okay, well, maybe at Christmas we'll go Christmas shopping. She'd never been Christmas shopping before. There are people that don't know stuff like that. Like I think a lot of times we take stuff like this for granted. And so we went to Target, and I was trying to get her to buy something for her mom that would be like nice, like in the Martha Stewart section or something. She decided that day that what would be really awesome is if we bought her mom a new bra and underwear. Okay, now so we're in that section and she's trying it all on. Sweating. I'm sweating even thinking about it now. But this little girl began to find out about the world. We connected her to a church, and some awesome families got in their mom's life. Her mom got out of prison after a few months, and they got in her life, bought her a car, did something. And 20 years later, my little friend Angel, I've talked to some people, my little friend Angel graduated from college, bought a house, is got married. And I think all that happened, not because of me, because other people got in her life and got socially connected to her. And you might be saying, well, what does that have to do with me? I think it has everything to do with us. Because without connection, we are euchred. We become Cain and Abel. We become Jacob and Esau. We become Joseph and his brothers. But we can't just think that that's going to just happen, because we actually have to do some things that promote connection in our lives and in our church lives. All the research tells us this, that every person, the number one important thing in discipleship is that children would have 5 people. 5 people. So they need 5 people outside of you, mom and dad, who are going to know them, speak into their lives. I'm telling you this, I tell my church this every week. For all 4 of my kids, I'm looking for their 5. Because I understand this, that if kids will get 5 people in their life, they have an 85% chance of serving the Lord all the days of their life. And that's what my job is as a mom, to make sure that my kids grow up to serve Jesus. So let me ask you this, who are the 5 people in your kids' lives? Now, you might not have kids. I think this is a really important point to talk about. Our culture is changing. 35% of Canadians will not get married ever. Now, some of you are looking to get married, and that really depressed you right now. I am not one of those 35%. And you might not be. But it is true that Canadians in general are getting married less. And so I think we have to talk to the singles in the room. You might be single here today and think, well, this is just about families. And what if you don't have kids? This is just, I don't have any kids. This is where I think it's even more important. If you're single here today, I want to say to you, you're single, that's a gift. The Lord said that was a gift. We got to come back to not just saying, that's a gift until you get married. So, some people are single, you've been single all your life and you're not looking to be married. We want to applaud you and bless you and honor you, because it's a gift. But if you're single here today, you've got to actually really lean into having connection and bringing connection to other people. This is a very, very important thing. Maybe you don't believe me that this connection piece is really important. Well, the world is starting to wake up. Most of the speaking engagements I now do in the corporate world have to do with connection. Companies are asking me this, how can you come and help our employees be more connected to one another? And I think as a church, we have this opportunity, because we're all here together, to be really connected. Blair, you and I were just talking about this a few minutes ago, how we have this opportunity, because we're all together, to actually be really connected. The last thing we want to be is a whole bunch of people that come in and sit in gray chairs and then just go home, not connected to one another at all. But we actually have to be disciplined about that, and we have to find ways to do that are... we have to do it on purpose, intentional. So here's some things. I want to give you, how do we build connectivity in our families? And if you don't have a family here, how do we build connectivity in our lives? And then we're going to break in a few minutes and actually do this for a few minutes. So the first thing is this. We need to take time to talk to each other. Proverbs 12:25 says, anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down, but a good word makes him glad. So now, 20 years ago, this is probably just common sense. But now, if you go out, now I know this is not your family, but if you go out to a restaurant, you'll see families having dinner, and what are they doing? Everybody's texting each other at the table, and people don't talk to each other anymore. They don't have eyeball to eyeball. I think as the church, this is where we got to swim upstream a little bit. Moms and dads, this is where you got to be a little bit tough and just say, no, we're not going to live our life through our devices. We're going to live it through eyeball to eyeball conversation. That means, mom and dad, you're allowed to say no. No more iPad. No more Netflix. Maybe not forever. No more Snapchat. No more. These things can't lead us. If they lead us, we get ourselves into trouble. We have to be able to protect time that we talk to one another. Second thing is this: we have to call out the best in one another. Now, I think sometimes when we hear this, we think that, like, I'm going to say, hey, Angela, you are a very good singer, which she is a very good singer. But that's not exactly that's not going to bring connectivity between Angela and I. Because studies show us this. If you're looking for a good book to read, this book by Carol Dweck is a great book. It's called Mindset. When I just praise Angela for what she's good at, what I'm telling her is this: you are only worth your talent. You're only worth your talent. I want to call us, if we're going to be connected people, we've got to call each other out for character issues. Like I'm saying to my daughter who's in the 10th grade, listen, Amir, I see that you're working so hard in math, and that's amazing. That persevering spirit is causing me to persevere. See, when we get that level of connection with one another, and I would say this in your family, that we need to lean across the table and connect with each other this way. But I would also say it just in our own connectivity as a church, that we gotta lean across the tables and the chairs to one another and say, wow, I really see the way that you're parenting your kids. If you're older in this room, you have an ACE card that you can say to people, hey, I've been there before when your kid is screaming for a snack during communion. And hey, I see that, and wow, you're doing such a good job. I'm cheering you on. Your kids are going to rise up and call you blessed. We have the opportunity to be able to speak goodness over each other like that. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, therefore, encourage one another and build one another up. This is how we, in churches, sometimes we get into performance mode. So like if I'm good at like the things that my particular church likes, then I get praised. But if I'm not, then I don't know, where does that leave me? This is where did you know that studies have been done across evangelical lines? And what they found is that people that stay in churches are usually good at the arts. Like they're good at playing the guitar. They're good at, like with a microphone, they can tell a lot of jokes. They're extroverted. Where we are not good though, we're losing people by the droves. Maths, science is STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and math. We're losing people like they're just flying out the door. I think part of it is that we praise people for their gifts instead of who they were inside. So you got the kid that's going to be like an engineer. He's going to take over the world, but he doesn't play the guitar and he sings in the key of Z. So like, and we say things like this, well, couldn't you be like a little bit more emotive in worship? How come you're not at the front dancing and like break dancing? What's wrong with you? I guess you don't love God. Instead of looking inside that kid and saying, hey, listen, you studied like 9 hours for that math test last night. You got perseverance in your soul. We call that out of you because that's powerful and beautiful. I am a math nerd, and I have fire in my bones to call all the math people back to Jesus. Because I think we've lost them. I like all the kids I went to university with that were into like, okay, we're into weird stuff, like geeky stuff. But they all flooded out of the church. I think it's partly because we didn't have connectivity with people like that. Because we just praised the stuff on the stage. Moms and dads, you have the opportunity to call Jesus out of your kids. The single people here, you have the opportunity to call Jesus out of people who might never get that call again. This is our high calling as Christians, to be people who connect with people on a deep and powerful level. Thirdly, we get the chance to hold each other accountable. So some of us hate conflict. If you're in the room and you hate conflict, show me your hand, because who really likes conflict? And really, when I hear the word accountability, that's what that sounds like, conflict, a big old ball of conflict. But when we're actually connected, calling each other to accountability is not about saying, I'm going to call you out, your sin. No, it's about saying, hey, I think there's more inside of you. I think there's more inside of you. James talks about this, and it says, therefore, confess your sins to one another. Okay, so here's the thing. Let me ask you this question. Could your family sit around the table and confess their sins to each other? This is where this verse gets a little weird for me, because I think, could we sit around the table and could I say, now, parents, I'm not telling you to air all your dirty laundry to your children. Do not do that. But can we say sorry? Can we look at our kids and say, hey, I made a mistake there? Are your kids free to share things with you? Do you have people in your life that you can share your stuff with, that you can become undone with and not feel like, have you ever done this? You've shared something and then you've walked away and gone, ooh, I shouldn't have said that. Why did I say that? Yeah. If you're not having any moments like that, I want to say that you're not socially connected to people. If you haven't shared something deep about your life with somebody, I'm not saying you've got to share it with everybody, then I'm going to suggest that you're probably not leaning in to connectedness enough. Because we cannot say, I will be connected to God, but not to people. It's not the way we were designed. You cannot say, I will share everything with God, but people are off limits. That's not the way of the kingdom. We build connectivity by crying and laughing with one another. Romans 12:15 says, rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. I think we're pretty good at rejoicing, usually, if we're not jealous. Can I just say that? One thing about Instagram and these social media platforms is that they have really brought out envy to a new level. Because you see everybody's holiday vacations, and doesn't it feel like people go on vacation more than you? Isn't this true? It's because you only see their highlights, right? And then you say, it seems like they live in Florida. They probably don't even work. They probably won the lot. They play the lottery, I know it, or they gamble. I think we got to get better at rejoicing with each other and mourning with each other. And mourning with each other means we build connectivity by sitting with each other and just maybe not even saying anything. You don't always need words. You don't always need words. The fifth thing and the last thing is this. I think we build connectivity in our families, in our social networks, by setting goals and dreams together. Habakkuk 2:2 says this, write the vision down so that when you're running, you'll be able to see it. Now, I think organizations, like your pastor's probably preached this message before. Habakkuk 2:2, we're going to have a vision for Gateway Church. So that when we're running, we can see what's laid out. But what's weird is that we don't often have a vision for our own family. What's the vision for your family in the next year? What do you believe in God's going to do in your family? Now, I know some of you are looking at me like, my kids are all grown up. My family's done now. But what's the vision for you and your wife in the next 15 years, 5 years? What is it that you believe that God's going to do through you? You got to get a vision as a family together. And I think this is one of the most important tasks that we can do as parents, as social groups. What is the vision for my life? What is the vision for us as a family unit? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask my helpers to, we're going to distribute some paper right now to you. We're going to do a craft this morning, everyone. You expected a lady preacher to do a craft, didn't you? Oh, the jokes. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask the band to come back. And I know, okay, so now I am not a crafty person. I do not like doing crafts. I actually hate them because I have 17 thumbs. And I know that some of you are going to want to cheese out on this right now. I'm going to tell you not to, though. I would like you you can just give a few pages and then pass them down because I think we got a lot, so. Here's what I want you to do. If you came with a family, I want you to get into your family unit. If there's just two of you, that's fine. You can get into your family unit or you can join another family if you want. And I want you to do these four things. You're going to, number one, take some time to call out the best in one another. Okay, so not like, hey, you're really good at making the bed. But I want you to call out character things in one another. And then I want you to just take some time to talk about some goals that you could set as a family over the next year. So this time next year at Pursuit Conference, what are you asking God to do in your family? Okay, so 3 to 5 goals. You might be an overachiever here and want to have 10. I'm going to encourage you to have 3 to 5. Anything after 5 is like, if you do it, great. but just get 3 to 5. And then the next thing I want you to do is, we just go to the next one. Okay, so this is a practice my family has been doing for the last couple of years. It's been life transformative for us. So every year at about this time, in fact, we're going to do this exercise next week, my family is. We go away on a little holiday for like 48 hours. And my friends had told me about this idea because in liturgical churches, there's this idea that they pick out Advent words. So everybody comes to the front and they pick a word, and that's the word that they're going to focus on for the whole year. I would like you, maybe you can just try it from here to the end of the year, and then maybe coming into the new year, you can pick new ones. But I'd like you just to take a little bit of time to pray together and ask God, what word would he have each of you focus on? And this sounds trivial at first. Might sound trivial, and that's what your paper is going to be for. You're going to write down your goals, and then you're going to write down this word. Sounds trivial, but it has been transformative for our family. So last year we went away, and my kids all, this is like a big to-do. We go to Michael's, and I don't do crafts. I am the mom that does not do crafts. We go to Michael's, and we get something like this. Now, you can get this at the dollar store, by the way, so this can be your rough copy, your piece of paper. And then all of my kids come up with a word, and they pray about it for maybe a couple of days, but let's get real. My daughter was 4 last year, so she wasn't praying about it for a couple of days. The Lord just showed her. Because God can speak to kids, yes? Amen. Okay, so everybody picks a word, and then we write the word down. We actually stencil it because we're fancy like that. No, it's really because I can't freehand. And then we put it in a place that we can see it. I put it in my kitchen in a cabinet that I have. And all year long, we remind each other. So my 12-year-old son's word last year, he felt like God gave him the word servant, serve. And all year long, it's been so beautiful. My 5-year-old will say, Julian, I remember that's why you're doing the dishes, because your word is serve. And God's helping you to serve. It's so beautiful. My 7-year-old picked the word joy. And he'd had a particularly hard year. He was in and out of the hospital all of last fall. And so when we got together this fall, he said, now we get together more. It sounds like it's the first time we've gotten together all year. But when we came for this little thing, he said, Mom, I really thought about it. He was 6 at the time. He said, my word's going to be joy, because I'm believing God's going to give me joy this year. I had a lot of pain, and he's very dramatic, so I had a lot of pain and hardship this year, which he kind of did. And but all year, it's so cool. Coming into January, he said, Mom, and he'd had major medical concerns. He said, Mom, God's given me joy, even though, now at Christmas, not Thanksgiving, he was saying to my brother, who's his uncle, Uncle Caleb, I've had the word joy this year, and even when that doctor had to put the tube in my bottom, and he gave us a lot of details, he said, I still had joy, because God gave me joy. Something powerful, though, when you begin to focus as a family, and it's not in isolation. As a family, you hold each other accountable. So conversely, when my son doesn't want to clean the toilets, as is his chore, his brothers and sisters will say to him, but your word is servant. I thought your word was servant. And I will straighten right up and go, okay, you're right. Now my littlest girl, her word was play. Now my oldest kids were like very mad about that word. I don't think she heard from the Lord, Mom. She definitely did not hear from the Lord. But you know, it's going to be a beautiful thing when she grows up and remembers that when she was 4 years old, turning 5, that God spoke the word play over her. That's do you remember like when you were about 20 and in university and sweating, and you think, I want to go back to kindergarten when I can just play? It's a beautiful thing. So there's no limits on the words. I told you about their words to tell you there's no limits on the words. Maybe your kids are gonna pick play, or I don't know. But I do know this, that it aids us in connectivity because we have something to talk about that's spiritual with one another. And maybe you're single here. I do want to speak to the single people for a minute. You are not less than because you don't have a family, but you're going to have to work at creating family. And so if you're single here today, don't not do this exercise. I want you to find other people who can be your people and who you have this discussion with and you lean into together. Or maybe you're here and you're a family and you could adopt somebody who's single. Some of the most powerful people in my children's life have been single people because they have time. They can speak. They can be one of the 5. And so that's how we're going to end today. I think we can move the chairs a little bit. I think there are tables and stuff back there. So if you want to move your family to somewhere like that, feel free to do that. The band's just going to play. We're going to spend the next 10 minutes. So we're going to be done by 5 after 12, 6 after 12. Okay, so spend the next 10 minutes. This is it. Now listen, I know this is not like a moment where we come to the carpet and we cry, but this is a deeply spiritual moment. These kinds of moments of connectivity are deeply spiritual and important. So get with your families and just spend a few minutes talking with one another.